So what is the title? Well, it's the power of citizen science and the joys of birding/e-birding. So today during our talk, we're going to go through what eBird is essentially, and then we're going to go into the website and show you how it works. And then at the end, Jake's going to talk a lot about the science that is being used with those data that are collected through eBird, and also talk a little about the project he's working on, about how to use the data. So let's get started. I think. Oh, there we go. So obviously, what is eBird? Well, it's an electronic database. It was started by Cornell in the early 2000s, and it's to collect bird sightings from all around the world. And these data, they come from you guys, the birders, right? So you go into the field and you submit a checklist of what you see, and you say, well, I saw it at this location, at this time, and I was doing this, and these are the species I saw. So pretty straightforward, and I think a lot of people now in Nova Scotia are using eBird, though perhaps even 3 years ago that wasn't the case. And I gave a talk actually to the Bird Society. There's probably about, I don't know, 10 people, 15 people. It's more of a blurb. Ian McLaren was talking about vagrants and, well, wind patterns and, the occurrences of vagrants. And so I just got slipped in right before him to try and get people in on eBird back then. So it's nice to have a full room. And so yeah, so there's a checklist on the right there from the Pleasant Hill Cemetery. I was trying to find a redwing. Had no luck, but I did see other species and quite valuable data for eBird. Perhaps not as what I hoped for, but what you going to do, right? And so why eBird? Why collect all these observations? Why go to the trouble of submitting your checklist online? Well, it's essentially to try and make use of all this birding effort that's being done by amateurs, professionals, backyard feeder watchers, and collect all those observations in one place. So, and not only that, but try to do it across a global scale. So, eBird essentially now, with the encouragement of Cornell and spreading through bird societies and people telling other birds to use it, it's amassing one of the fastest growing biodiversity databases in the world, and this is quite powerful. And we'll see at the end of the talks, some things that are coming from it and the direction that we can go with the amount of data that are being collected. So, and then the fact is that these observations can be shared with others. They can be shared with educators. They can be shared with land managers, ornithologists, conservation scientists. So this is our little outline. So we're going to go right into the website for a bit here. We're going to get out this PowerPoint presentation, and we're going to do a lot of hands-on demonstration. We're going to go through how to submit a checklist, how to look at the data that are there, how to plan trips using the data, how to utilize it to get alerts for rare birds or whatever you're interested in, and then how the data is reviewed, how the quality of the data is controlled. And I think a lot of people might know the first part, the eBird basics, how to submit a checklist, but I think some of the other stuff might be new to a lot of people. We kind of have a mixed group here with experience, so we'll start from the beginning, but hopefully it will be applicable to all. Okay, so let's get out of here for now and go right onto the internet. So, Jake, do you want to take it away? And
Sure, yeah.
Actually, is that good? Yeah, that works.
Yeah, so we're just going to go in and start with kind of how to submit a checklist to eBird. I'm not going to go into how to create an account, but if you have any trouble with that or have questions, you can ask us about it after the talk here. So, to submit observations, you just start by clicking on the Submit Observations tab once you have your account, and then you have to choose where you went birding. So, if you've already been to a bunch of birding locations like Dominic has, this is his account, you have all these ones to choose from. But if you're just getting started, the easiest way is probably to pick it from a map, unless you have coordinates for your location. There are a few other options here, like select it from an entire city, county, state, or country, but these options really aren't that useful. I mean, the data is just too broad. It's not from a specific location. And in most cases, it's actually just invalidated because it's just too broad. The mapping is not good enough. So we don't encourage using that unless you're like entering a list from a long time ago. You just want it in there for your state list, and that's it.
There's also the import data option, which we will talk about at the end, because I think that's important for some people in this room that do have a lot of old data, either in Excel checklists or bird systems like AVSys and other things. So there is an option to just bulk upload whole observations.
Okay, so you can type in all sorts of different locations into the map here, just kind of narrow down your search. So I'll just put in Nova Scotia. Then you have this handy screen here. It's kind of hard to use the mouse here. I'm trying to use this touchpad. So you can kind of zoom in on an area wherever you went birding. And so Dominic and I did a little birding on the way down today. So we'll pick one here from Northwest Arm. You can kind of just zoom in to the specific location where you were. And so we were right here at Horseshoe Island Park. And just for this, I'm going to make just a new location here. You'll notice like there's different personal locations are in blue, so these are some of Dominic's locations, and then hotspots are in red. So there's this hotspot here for Northwest Arm. And we were talking about it, and this Horseshoe Island Park here really probably should be a hotspot. So we're just going to make it one today as we're doing this. So type in got a little thing in there. Sorry for my typing. Can't see the screen. Or the keyboard. Where's the shift key on your? There it is. I'm getting it again. It's not the same as my keyboard. I'm on caps lock. Excuse me. All right, and so right away we have this option to suggest it as a hotspot. It's down here, so I'm just going to go ahead and click that, and that'll send an email to either me or Dominic or David Bell. We're all reviewers. Actually, it doesn't send it to an email. It sends it now. It used to be an email-based system. Now it goes directly to the review page, a separate page, and so it'll just put a record in there that we have a hotspot to review. And so we get here, and we have different options to choose of different kinds of counts, potential counts. The date is today's date, so it's pretty easy. You can just click on the calendar here, and it should automatically populate that. So the 25th, and so there's different options. Most counts are probably either traveling or stationary, and if you need any details, you can kind of see here. For traveling counts, typically they want to be less than 5 miles, just so that the locations are plotted accurately, but it doesn't have to be. Like, it won't be necessarily validated just because the checklist is of a longer distance or duration, but it's more useful data if it's less than 5 miles in duration.
Yes, particularly because a lot of times the habitat type changes quickly. If you're in the same sort of habitat, you know, even 20 kilometers, if it's the same type of habitat, it's generally good. But if you're changing habitat types, or especially in the tropics where you change elevations very quickly, you know, you want to be very precise because essentially we're trying to map bird abundancies or and occupancies from that habitat. And a lot of studies then take out the GIS layers for the countries and plot the observations over the GIS layers. And so the more specific you are with the habitat types that you're birding, where your locations, the better the data. You know, the better the quality, and the better conclusions can be drawn based on habitat types. So.
What's GIS?
Pardon me?
What's GIS?
GIS, Geographic Information System. So it's you know, using habitat layers. The province, Nova Scotia has them. It'll say this area is what's good? Mixed woods dominated by red maple and yeah. So it's a lowland swamp dominated by red maple, right? And so there's a lot of that going on where, you know, countries, provinces, they set up habitat layers for the area, and then if you can overlay bird observations on top of those habitat layers, then you can draw associations out really well. So yeah, it's just to kind of think about the bigger picture when you're putting in locations, why to be very precise and not try to be kind of, you know, be more precise than just, you know, oh, I was kind of near, you know.
Yeah, like that is especially important if you're near the coast. If you're plotting coastal birds and you're birding along the coast, just not to plot those locations inland. Kind of misleading. So yeah, the other most common type of checklist is stationary. It's pretty self-explanatory. You're in one location and it's whatever birds you record in a given amount of time. Then there's these two other types here. There's the historical checklist, which is kind of misnamed, I'd say. It's really a checklist where the effort is incomplete. So You might be missing the distance, or you might be missing the start time, or just something is missing from the checklist. Doesn't have everything necessary for a traveling list. So it's really useful for old checklists. If you have a big, long checklist, you just want to put it in there. You don't necessarily know how far you traveled that day, but you might know the time. It's a little bit better than this incidental observation, which is just kind of, if you were just birding, you have a checklist, but you don't really have much information about it. And then there's a few other more specialized observation types. Like there's a special one for pelagic birding, and there's area counts, banding protocols, and these other ones. They're all explained if you click on them, if you feel like you might need to use one of those. But typically, most observations will fall into these first four that are on here. So today we're just doing a stationary count, and I don't know, what time do we start, Dominic?
Okay, question. I tried to plot a point out in the ocean when I was pelagic birding. It wouldn't let me pick a point offshore. How would you go about that?
Was it on the website or with the app?
It was straight out of eBird on the website from my computer.
I mean, there should be no problems.
It should work.
That might have been, that have been some. I mean, you can plot anywhere in the world. You can plot anywhere in the ocean. If you end up outside of the EEZ, was it 200 miles out, from the mainland, you end up in the high seas. And eBird actually has a region called the high seas, and they have a checklist just for that one. So it won't come to us, Nova Scotia reviewers, but. It goes to, I don't know, there's a guy who does the high seas anyway. So, but yeah, you can plot in the ocean, and especially a pelagic trip that's only 20 kilometers offshore, you should be able to, so I don't know what was the deal.
You have to be zoomed in enough or it won't let you.
Right, so.
Right, that may have been the issue, yeah.
So I'm just I put my checklist today on my phone, so we're gonna go through and do the checklist from today, but put it in this way. Yeah, so I'm not sure why that was the case. That's kind of.
Keith got a point. I might have been zoomed out.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah, a lot of times it's easier to do those if you have coordinates just to do it that way, especially if you're in the middle of the ocean.
Right. Right. So yeah, the other thing is eBird does in the ocean ones. Depending on the U.S. uses different delineations for specifying which province or county an area is for. So sometimes it doesn't go into the right country. In fact, there's a Bermuda petrel record that was actually in Massachusetts, waters in Massachusetts, but it ended up in the Nova Scotia filter, and that's just simply because eBird uses, a lot of times they use the Google, the Google polygons for areas, but that's something that, so those are little fixes, but in general, yeah, pelagic birding is good to go. So you want to know what time we started?
That's okay, it doesn't really matter. So say 3 p.m., we were there for about 15 minutes.
You don't need to put in 0 hours when you do that, right? I always do, but...
No, you don't need to.
No.
What would you typically put in the comments field?
Well, that might be something about like the weather, like the temperature, or if just any other thing about your observation. Just more generalized comments about the location or the birding event, who you were with, any other circumstances involving the birding trip. Not necessarily, or maybe like if you were trying to track down a specific bird, you maybe say, yeah, I was looking for the red wing, or we were looking for the ruddy duck.
Those comments, the checklist comments, are more for you. Generally, if someone's searching for, records of blackpoll warblers, and they click on that, they see your record for blackpoll warbler, and they click on the checklist, they're going to get, if you put a comment under the species, but unless they go to that checklist and look at the whole thing, they won't see the comments in the top. So for me personally, I put, it's only if it's relevant, like, oh, this was the hike up in Cascade Canyon, or this was, looking, as we were banding, sometimes as a bird bander, I put in if I was banding or not, right? So it's more just to help you out, and you don't really need any comments in there. That's totally up to you.
Right, that's true. Yeah, the public can't see this, right? I think.
They used to not be able to.
Yeah.
Now they can.
Oh, now they can.
Yeah.
Okay, switch it back.
Yeah. So if you put something obscene, they'll see it.
Yeah.
All right. So we had 25 black ducks.
Okay, so you can just go straight to American black duck, and I'll show you.
Wrong one.
Oh, sorry, that's the new American.
Yeah.
black
So
duck
I actually added the option to
That's
put in
okay.
black duck and mallard. You'll see that's not very precise, but sometimes there are distant dabblers that are mallards or black ducks. those data are not that useful, but especially for new birds, I think it's helpful to have that option so they're not discouraged, and so they are reporting, I saw 35, black ducks / mallards, and as you get better and get more used to it, you can start throwing in black ducks. But it helps to show that, you're not excluding individuals that you saw, even if you couldn't identify them. 15 mallards. One lesser scop. 14 goldeneye.
Okay, I'll just show you this here. You can use this jump to species box where you can either spell out the bird. You can also use like 4-letter species codes. So you can just put in Kogo for common goldeneyes. It's actually a pretty fast way to enter checklists if you know the codes. It helps out quite a bit. Would you say 14?
Yeah, so in winter, right, we don't have that many species, so it's easy to scroll through, but say you're birding in Colombia, and on the filter you have 200 options, it's easier to jump the species. And so I think we'll take a break here. So you see, like, we're all putting in specific numbers of individuals that we counted. And obviously, that's the best you can do. eBird gives you the option of putting an X, or in fact, you can put any letter, it doesn't matter. And that's just a simple indication of presence absence. And a lot of times, in data analyses, there is just an element of presence absence for certain species. So you have an effort and time associated with it, and you have, was this species present or absent? And so that's fine, but eBird highly encourages people to count. And I know I was talking to someone that's a new birder, she's 14, and she was worried about counting, right? So I'm not sure how accurate I am. And what I told her is that, even your best estimate is better than an X. If you're estimating in the magnitude of, order of 10, say, there were 30 herring gulls, and maybe there were 40 herring gulls, but 30 is better. Is that better to put 30 than to put an X? Because even if you think you don't know how many there are, your best guess is better. Obviously, if it's something completely, crazy, like, there were maybe 2 or 3 Lapland longspurs, and you think there might have been 50, but people don't do that, right? People have a good gauge of, there were a lot of herring gulls, there was about 50 to 100, and when you get to those higher numbers, the error associated with your estimate is not so crucial, right? So if there were 70 herring gulls and you put 60, that error is not really crazy. So it's definitely better to put a full number. Yeah.
And it will also, if you're putting in a number that seems high for a specific area, it'll let you know.
Yeah, so we set the filters to eliminate certain high counts, and it's not that's unlikely to happen. It's just to make sure it's very easy to put in. You want to put 1 in, and you put 11, right? So if I set the filter at 10, that way there it trips at 11, and make sure that doesn't go in as 11 individuals, only 1 individual. All right, so let's continue this checklist. We had 6 red-breasted mergansers, 1 black-headed gull, 5 ring-billed gulls. Right, so Jason's can switch. 40 herring gulls. Now you'll notice here that I have the option of putting American herring gull. So that option comes from on the side here. I have checked show subspecies, and there's a big thing about using subspecies. So if I say that all downy woodpeckers you see in eastern North America are going to be eastern downy woodpeckers, and I give that option, and you use that option, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Unless you actually looked at the bird and said this is an eastern downy woodpecker, you don't actually know that that's what it was. So eBird is big on only using subspecies if you critically identify the subspecies, and it's best to leave off the subspecies unless you are certain that that's what it was. Because otherwise, like I say, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that when you're in the west or southwest, all the cardinals become southwestern cardinals, or you're in the east, so all the fox sparrows become red fox sparrows. So eBird only encourages people using subspecies when they're absolutely certain. I keep that option checked, but you don't need to, and there's nothing wrong with not reporting subspecies. So in this case, American herring gull, I'm not going to put it. I didn't critically. I mean, I've never seen. Well, I have seen a European herring gull. I've never been to Europe.